Today, we are diving deep into a reality that's hiding just in plain sight, a world where the so-called laws of physics might just be a little more flexible than we think, especially when they meet the power of human consciousness. So let me just start with a simple question for you. Is it actually possible for one person to be in two separate places at the exact same time? I mean, everything we know about science, about reality, screams no way. But what if that's not the final answer? The answer, and it's a huge yes, comes from Paramahansa Yogananda's incredible book, Autobiography of a Yogi. This isn't just a story. It's a first-hand account of a life that was just jam-packed with events that defy any normal explanation, pointing to a much deeper, much more subtle reality operating just under the surface of our own. So our journey starts with a young boy, Mukunda Lal Goswami. The world would later come to know him as Paramahansa Yogananda. And right from the start, he was different. He had these incredibly clear memories of a past life as a yogi, living high up in the snowy peaks of the Himalayas. And this quote, it just nails the two huge ideas we're exploring. First, this whole thing is about a deep, relentless search for ultimate truth. And second, and this is crucial, that search is almost never a solo mission. It needs the guidance of a guru, a spiritual teacher who knows the way. So right from a young age, Mukunda witnessed and even caused events that you and I would absolutely call miracles. But in his world, these weren't some kind of supernatural magic. No, they were demonstrations of a universal law, a sacred science that, if you understood it, you could actually use. I mean, just imagine this. He gets into a little argument with his sister, and he declares with total confidence, "By the power of will in me, I say that tomorrow I will have a big boil right here." And what happens? The next morning, bam, there it is. A painful boil, so bad it needed surgery, and it left a scar he had for the rest of his life. A permanent reminder of the raw power of focused thought. Or what about this one? He's on a covered balcony, okay? So it's physically impossible for a runaway kite to get to him. But his sister dares him, so he closes his eyes and prays with this incredible intensity to the Divine Mother. And then, one by one, two kites break free from a kite fight across the street. They defy the wind, and they literally snag on a cactus right next to him, making a perfect little loop for him to grab. Coincidence? Or was his intention literally bending reality? This connection to a higher power gets even more intense. He's gravely ill with cholera. Back then, basically a death sentence. His mother tells him to look at a portrait of the great master Lahiri Mahasaya and just bow in his mind. The moment he does, a blinding light floods the room, so bright his mother feels it too. And just like that, every single symptom is gone. He's completely cured, instantly. And here's the mind-blowing takeaway from all this. These events aren't breaking the laws of nature. They're operating on a higher law. A true yogi sees that the universe isn't a bunch of separate things, but a single, unified field of energy. And a mind that's unified with that consciousness can directly influence it. That is the sacred science of miracles. Which brings us right back to the guru. Look, it's one thing to have these raw, latent abilities. It's something else entirely to understand them, to master them. The guru is the one who helps you navigate this hidden reality.
So back to our first question. When Yogananda was 12, his father sent him to find a man. The only lead he had was to go visit a famous saint, Swami Pranabananda. He gets there, walks into the Swami's room, and finds him sitting all alone, deep in meditation.
Okay, now get this. Yogananda sits there quietly with the Swami, who doesn't move or say a word for almost an hour. Then suddenly, the Swami speaks and says the man he's looking for is on his way. A moment later, the man arrives, and he is completely shocked to see Yogananda. Why? Because during that exact same hour, he was down by the Ganges River when Swami Pranabananda himself walked up to him, told him Yogananda was waiting, and then walked off. He even heard the sound of the Swami's wooden sandals on the path. He was in two places at once. So how? How is that even possible? Well, Swami Pranabananda explains it with this profound simplicity. He says that for a true yogi who has merged his consciousness with the universe, the whole idea of separation just dissolves. Space isn't a barrier anymore. This wasn't a magic trick. It was just a natural function of his state of being. Okay, so the obvious question here is, how in the world does someone get to that state of consciousness? It's not just by thinking happy thoughts. Yogananda's teachings are all about a very specific, you might even say scientific technique for spiritual evolution.
It's called Kriya Yoga. It's described as an ancient, almost mathematical method to speed up our own evolution. Basically, by controlling the life force in the body and calming down all the static from our senses and restless thoughts, you can start to experience your true self, which is one and the same with cosmic consciousness, or what many call God.
So really, the whole point of Kriya isn't about believing something blindly. It's about self-effort. It's a direct path to experiencing the divine for yourself, not just reading about it in some old book. Its power is in the practice. It's a key, but you're the one who has to turn it. But, finding this path wasn't exactly a straight line. As a teenager, just on fire with this desire to find God, Yogananda was convinced the answer was to run away to the Himalayas and find a master. So he and his friends, they cook up this whole elaborate plan. They even buy European clothes to use as a disguise. But the whole thing just falls apart almost immediately. One friend gets terrified when Yogananda starts talking about how their spiritual bliss would make them immune to tiger attacks, and he just bails. Then, a little later, his super smart older brother, who's basically a detective, tracks them down, and the whole adventure comes to a crashing halt. He was absolutely heartbroken. I mean, this grand romantic quest for God ended in total humiliating failure. But what looks like a disaster from our point of view is often just a necessary detour from a much higher perspective. And here is where it gets so beautiful. To try and calm him down, his father hires him a Sanskrit tutor. But this was no ordinary tutor. Unbeknownst to his father, this man, Swami Kebalananda, was a direct, enlightened disciple of the very same lineage of masters Yogananda was trying to find. He didn't have to run to the Himalayas. The Himalayas were brought right to his front door at exactly the right time. And through this new teacher, he finally learned the real lesson. The true journey isn't to some physical place, it's an internal one. That key of yoga, Kriya, isn't some theory you can debate about. It's a practice you have to live, day in and day out. The path to freedom requires constant, dedicated effort. We started all of this by asking if someone could be in two places at once. But Yogananda's teaching suggests that things like that, as amazing as they are really just side effects. The real sacred science, the greatest miracle of all, is the one that allows you to discover and then finally merge with the infinite universe that's already waiting right inside of you.